Why was she even here? That was the question on everyone's face when Sophia Martinez walked onto the sniper range that morning. 22 years old, barely 5'4", a recruit the men called Barbie with a Barrett when they thought she couldn't hear. But she always heard. The desert sun pressed down on the base, heat shimmering off the concrete, sweat stinging her eyes. She adjusted her stance on the firing line, lifted the 30-pound Barrett M82, and felt the silence behind her, the kind of silence that always followed a joke at her expense. They laughed when they thought she wasn't listening, but she was, every word carved into her. She knew Jackson's voice before he spoke. "Princess is gonna cry again." The others chuckled. They remembered that day 2 weeks ago when her shot went wide and frustration leaked out in tears she couldn't stop. One moment of weakness, a lifetime of ammunition for mockery. Her jaw tightened, but she stayed still. That was her way, not defiance, not tears this time, just stillness. "Martinez," barked Sergeant Rodriguez, gruff, impatient. He never shielded her from the ridicule. 800 meters, you've got one shot, don't waste our time." The rifle pressed heavy into her shoulder. 800 meters wasn't supposed to be impossible, not for recruits in this program. But for her, it was more than a test of skill. It was Judgment Day. Behind the noise, behind the sweat and the burning eyes, she felt another presence. Memory, a voice older, kinder. Her grandfather. Mija, he used to call her. Shooting isn't about strength, it's about patience, breathing, making the weapon part of your soul. She steadied her breath. The world narrowed into a scope. Wind, 3 miles per hour from the west, temperature rising, humidity low, factors that didn't care about gender, size, or ridicule. Numbers told the truth. "Time up, Martinez," Rodriguez snapped. She squeezed the trigger, not yanked, not rushed. The Barrett thundered, recoil slamming into her, echo rolling across the barren range, a blur of heat, a dot vanishing downrange. "Miss," Jackson shouted, too eager, too loud. Laughter followed, harsh and brittle. But Rodriguez stayed silent, hunched over his spotting scope. He shifted once, twice. His face hardened. "That's not a miss," he muttered. A junior instructor jogged downrange. Long minutes passed. The recruits whispered, some snickering, others suddenly uncertain. Then the runner returned, holding the paper target in his hands like it was holy. "Dead center, Sergeant, perfect bullseye." The laughter died, the whispers stopped. The silence this time was different, thick, uncomfortable. Sophia didn't smile, didn't gloat. She cycled the bolt, ejected the spent casing, and settled in for the next shot. She had learned early real marksmen didn't brag. They let the bullet speak. "Let's see it again." 1,000 meters, Rodriguez ordered, his tone no longer mocking. The target shimmered like a mirage at that distance, impossible to most, necessary to her. She steadied her breath, entered the zone. The second shot roared. Through the scope she saw the target jolt, another perfect hit. This time no one laughed. Some of them even nodded, grudging, as if their bodies betrayed the pride they didn't want to feel. Sophia exhaled and lowered her rifle. 2 perfect shots, but she knew better than to think it changed everything. Respect in this world wasn't handed over in a moment. It was carved, one bullet at a time, into steel and silence. That night in the barracks, she cleaned her rifle with slow precision, the same ritual her grandfather had taught her at 8 years old in Montana. The smell of oil and steel, the feel of worn cloth. Each movement was deliberate, calming. She heard the whispers from across the room, softer now, uncertain. "She's not bad. 2 lucky shots don't make a sniper." But the venom was gone. As she slid the bolt free, she remembered something her grandfather had once told her as they sat together under the big Montana sky. "Every shot you take, Mija, carries weight. It isn't just metal flying through the air. It's a decision, a responsibility." She hadn't understood it then, but she was beginning to. Sleep came slowly, doubt still lingered. Tomorrow she knew the tests would grow harder. Urban warfare simulations, moving targets, split-second decisions. And she would face it all while still hearing echoes of laughter, still carrying the memory of being the outsider. Yet under the weight of doubt, something else stirred inside her, a seed of calm, a certainty, the realization that her skill wasn't just reaction, it was choice. She could miss, she could break, she could fail, or she could hold steady, breathe, and let the shot speak louder than her words ever could. As the base lights dimmed, Sophia whispered to herself, not prayer, not plea, just a reminder. You belong here. Tomorrow would prove whether she was right. Why was no one standing beside her? The recruits were already pairing off, laughter bouncing around the training yard as they chose their partners. Spotter and shooter, shooter and spotter, two-man teams for the next exercise. But when the dust settled, Sophia stood alone. Again. Jackson smirked across the line, his voice carrying just far enough. Looks like the princess needs a babysitter. Any volunteers? The chuckles rolled like a wave. It was always like this. She was the last one picked, the liability no one wanted to drag through a mission. Sophia felt the heat of humiliation crawl up her neck, but she forced her eyes on the ground. The weight of silence pressed on her chest. Then a voice, quiet but firm, cut through. I'll take her. The laughter stopped, heads turned. Marcus Chen. He wasn't loud like Jackson, not the kind of recruit who dominated the barracks with stories and swagger. Marcus was different, quiet, reserved, known for his strange obsession with numbers. Ballistics, wind tables, mathematical precision. Most recruits thought he was odd, but Sergeant Rodriguez called him the best spotter in the program. Your funeral, Chen, Jackson muttered. Hope you like carrying dead weight. Marcus ignored him and walked towards Sophia, calm as ever. He stopped beside her, lowered his voice, and simply said, I think we'll make a good team. Sophia blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever volunteered for her, not once. She searched his face for a hint of mockery but found only sincerity. Your shooting yesterday was impressive, Marcus added. Real impressive. Her throat tightened, gratitude mixed with fear of letting him down. Thank you, she whispered. I won't waste it. The exercise was brutal by design. Concrete buildings, rusted-out vehicles, civilian mannequins mixed with hostile ones. Snipers had 30 minutes to eliminate 5 threats without collateral damage, the kind of pressure where hesitation killed. Marcus set up the spotting scope on the 3rd floor of a crumbling building. Sophia unfolded the bipod of her Barrett and pressed her cheek against the stock. The smell of dust and sweat filled her lungs. Target acquired, Marcus whispered. His voice was calm, steady, measured, the exact opposite of the chaos outside. Hostile with RPG, 450 meters, northwest corner, blue building, wind calm, temperature 78. Sophia found him through the scope. The mannequin's plastic eyes stared down from the corner, RPG slung across its shoulder. A civilian mannequin stood 3 feet away. She adjusted the crosshairs. The shot was tight, too tight for error. I see him, she whispered back. Clean shot available. She steadied her breathing, pressed the trigger. The Barrett roared, echoing down the alleyways. The hostile mannequin's head exploded into fragments. Hit confirmed, Marcus said without flinching. Somewhere beyond, instructors monitoring their radios took notes. Every word, every shot was being recorded, judged, dissected. They moved to the next target. Marcus fed her numbers like poetry. Distances, wind speeds, angles. Sophia answered with thunder. Each shot clean, each hit precise. But it wasn't the shooting that surprised her most. It was Marcus. The way his presence steadied her. He didn't second guess, didn't sneer. He trusted her, and that trust sharpened her more than any insult ever had. By the time the 30 minutes were up, their scoreboard flashed. 5 targets eliminated, 0 civilian casualties, record time. When the results were announced, Sergeant Rodriguez paused. His voice, normally sharp as gravel, carried something almost like disbelief. Martinez and Chen, top score in program history. The yard fell silent. Sophia looked down, wiping sweat from her brow. She didn't dare glance around. Didn't want to see the mix of resentment and reluctant respect. She simply disassembled her rifle, bolts sliding free, barrel cooling. That evening, back in the barracks, something shifted. Recruits who once ignored her approached with quiet nods. A few even asked about her shooting technique. Jackson muttered "lucky day" as he passed, but the venom was gone. His words sounded more like surrender than mockery. Sophia sat on her bunk, cleaning her rifle under the dim barracks light. The cloth rubbed oil across steel in familiar strokes. That was when Marcus sat beside her, not demanding, not boasting, just sitting. "You know," he said softly, "I've been watching you for months." Her eyes flicked toward him, curious, cautious. "Everyone sees the jokes, the comments, but they're missing something." "What's that?" she asked. He studied her for a moment, then spoke with quiet certainty. "You don't just shoot well, you shoot with purpose. Every round you fire, you know why you're firing it. That's not something you can teach." Sophia felt her throat tighten again, the words sinking deep into the cracks of her doubt. After months of ridicule, someone had finally seen her. Not the girl with the Barrett, not the joke, not the princess, but the sniper. She looked back down at her rifle, hands steady on the bolt. Her grandfather's voice whispered in memory, "Every shot is a decision. Every shot carries weight." For the first time, Sophia believed it might be true for her. As the lights dimmed, the recruits slipped into sleep. Laughter no longer filled the barracks. Sophia lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Marcus's words echoing in her chest. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time since stepping onto this base, she didn't feel alone. What happens when the desert strips away excuses? That was the question hanging in Sophia's mind as the helicopter dropped them into the wasteland. No barracks, no shade, no safety net, just sand, rock, heat, and the endless sky. Operation Desert Storm, 3 days, 4 recruits, survival. The rotors faded into distance, leaving silence so complete it pressed against their ears. Jackson unfolded a map on the ground, his voice steady but not smug this time. 8 clicks northeast. Simulated enemy compound. That's our first objective. He looked at Sophia differently now. Not with mockery, not with superiority, with something closer to respect. "Martinez," he asked, "what's your effective range here?" The question caught her off guard. For the first time, he wasn't doubting. He was relying. She adjusted the Barrett's sling across her shoulder. The desert heat already made the metal feel like fire. 2,500 meters, she answered. "Beyond that, we'll need to get creative." Marcus nodded, running calculations on his handheld ballistics device. "Temperatures pushing 110 already. Mirage interference will be brutal." Jackson folded the map. "Then we move quiet, fast, and trust each other." For hours they trekked under the punishing sun. Sweat dripped, lips cracked, sand stung eyes. Sophia's smaller frame, once mocked, became an advantage. She moved faster, quieter, slipping into cover that Jackson's bulk couldn't manage. By dusk they reached the ridge. The compound sprawled below, squat buildings, guard patrols, shadows moving in the heat shimmer. Sophia lay prone, Barrett propped on its bipod. Through her scope, the world narrowed to a haze of shifting shapes. Mirage bent the lines, distorted movement. A sniper's nightmare. "I count 4 hostiles," Marcus whispered. "Range 1247 meters. Wind southwest 8 miles an hour." Jackson crouched behind them. "Civilians." Sophia squinted. A mannequin dressed as a civilian wandered aimlessly into her line of sight. Plastic face blank, its presence a cruel reminder. Hesitation saves lives. Impatience ends them. "Civilian in the field," she whispered. They waited 20 minutes. The heat shimmered. The mannequin drifted away. Clear, Jackson said. Sophia inhaled, exhaled, squeezed. The Barrett cracked like thunder. Even at distance, the hostile target collapsed instantly. One down, Marcus confirmed, shifting to target 2. Hours passed. Heat turned to chill as the desert bled into night. By the time they packed their gear, all 4 hostiles lay neutralized. 0 civilian casualties. 0 mistakes. Tommy radioed command, his voice barely more than a whisper in the dark. Team 7 reporting, objective complete, ready for Phase 2. The reply came not from an instructor, but from Colonel Morrison himself. Team 7, your performance today has been noted. Martinez, your shooting exceeded all expectations, but tomorrow will be harder. Get rest. Harder. They set camp in a rocky outcropping. Sand scratched skin, wind hissed through crevices, the desert alive with distant echoes. One by one, the team drifted into uneasy sleep. Sophia stayed awake on guard duty, Barrett across her lap. The stars blazed overhead, sharp, endless, cold. She heard boots approach, Jackson. For once, no smirk, no mockery. He lowered himself beside her, his voice quiet, stripped of arrogance. I owe you an apology. She didn't answer, not yet. Not just for the jokes, he continued, eyes fixed on the horizon, but for not seeing you sooner. Today, you saved the mission. Hell, in the real world, you probably saved us. Sophia's gaze stayed steady on the dark desert. We're a team. That's what teams do. Jackson exhaled slow. Then, with the faintest smile, maybe that Sniper Queen nickname, maybe it fits, but in a good way this time. For a long time, they sat in silence, 2 soldiers listening to the desert breathe. And in that silence, Sophia felt it, something shifting, mockery dissolving, respect growing, the weight of trust settling onto her shoulders. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sand in fire, she tightened her grip on the Barrett and whispered to herself the truth she'd always known but never spoken. You belong here. Tomorrow would test that truth harder than ever. What do you do when training ends and real lives hang in the balance? That question arrived with the morning sun, carried on Tommy's encrypted radio. The static broke, then a voice, urgent, sharp. Team 7, this is base command. Situation has changed. Team 4 is missing, presumed captured, coordinates attached. Rescue operation incoming. You are tasked with providing overwatch. Jackson's head snapped toward the radio. Timeline. You've got 4 hours to reach overwatch position. Special forces will move in at 1400 hours. Expect heavy resistance. Weather report shows rising winds. Possible sandstorm. The voice cut out. Silence remained. For a moment, the 4 of them just stared at each other. The simulation was over. This was no staged exercise with mannequins and safe zones. Real soldiers, friends they'd trained with, were in danger. Sophia felt her stomach tighten, but her hands stayed steady. She knew the truth. If she failed, men and women she had spoken to, eaten with, laughed with might die. Pack light, Jackson ordered. We move now. They crossed the desert in silence, sand whipping harder with each mile. The sun burned white above, wind clawed their faces, grit filled their mouths. Marcus kept his eyes on his instruments, muttering numbers like prayers. By the time they reached the rocky prominence overlooking the enemy compound, conditions were brutal. Wind gusts 15 miles an hour. Sandstorm haze cutting visibility. Mirage twisting every line of sight. Through her scope, Sophia caught glimpses of the compound. Concrete walls, guard towers, hostile figures moving in the heat shimmer. Somewhere inside, Team 4. Range to target, Jackson asked. Marcus squinted through his spotting scope. 1470 meters, wind shift variable, temperature 118, shooting conditions almost impossible. Sophia's cheek pressed against the stock. Sweat burned her eyes. She adjusted the scope, breath shallow against the dust. I can make the shots, she said. Her voice was low but steady. but I'll need constant wind calls. At exactly 1400, the radio crackled again. Overwatch, this is Rescue 1. We are approaching entry point. Need tower guards neutralized on your signal. Marcus's voice cut in. Calm, precise. Target 1, North Tower, single guard, range 1,470, wind gusting 12 to 15 southwest. Sophia adjusted, breath in, breath out. The Barrett roared, echo rolling across the rock. Through the scope she saw the guard collapse, one clean hit. Target down, Marcus confirmed. Outstanding shot, Overwatch, Rescue 1 radioed. Proceeding. Second target, harder. Guard half hidden behind cover, only a sliver of torso exposed. Wind gusting up to 18, erratic. Marcus hissed, this is rough. Range 1630. Variable crosswind, not a clean opportunity. Sophia's eye stayed on the scope. She thought quickly. A direct shot risked a miss and the rescue team's lives. She shifted her crosshairs, not on the guard, on the communications antenna beside him. She squeezed, the Barrett cracked, the antenna exploded. The guard shifted instinctively, stepping out of cover to investigate. Now, Marcus whispered. Sophia fired again. The target dropped instantly. 2 shots, 2 hits, Marcus confirmed, awe in his voice. Overwatch, Rescue 1 radioed again, breathless. We're in, prisoners secured, minimal casualties, extraction underway, outstanding work. Sophia didn't answer. She stayed locked in, covering every angle, every corner, until the last friendly was clear. Only then did she exhale, slowly lowering the Barrett. The desert was silent again, just the hiss of wind, the sting of sand. Jackson crouched beside her, helmet pushed back, eyes sharp. But this time there was no arrogance in them, only something else. Martinez, he said quietly, what you just did, I've never seen anything like it. Those conditions, that distance, you shouldn't have made those shots. No one should. Tommy looked up from the radio, grinning through exhaustion. Colonel Morrison's requesting a debrief, wants to hear it straight from you. But Sophia didn't feel like celebrating. Not yet. She sat back, Barrett across her lap, and cleaned sand from the action with calm, practiced hands. Her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. Every shot carries weight. She realized now what he meant, because these hadn't just been shots, they had been choices, choices that had saved lives. As the extraction helicopter thundered overhead, Marcus leaned close. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. You know what this means, right? She looked at him, unsure. You're not just good. You're not just proving them wrong anymore. What you did today puts you in a different category, one of the best they've ever seen. Sophia didn't answer. She just stared out at the horizon, watching sand clouds roll over the barren land. She felt the weight of those words, best they'd ever seen, and it didn't feel like pride. It felt like responsibility. When they climbed into the helicopter, the rotors hammering, she held the Barrett close, not like a weapon, more like an anchor. Because somewhere inside she knew, this wasn't the end of her proving, it was the beginning. How far can a single bullet reach? That was the question Sophia asked herself as she stood in Colonel Morrison's office, months after the desert rescue. The air was heavy with silence, his expression unreadable. He held a folder marked with red security stamps. Sergeant Martinez, he said at last, your record is unlike anything we've seen. Highest scores, flawless leadership, extraordinary performance under combat conditions. He paused, then slid the folder across his desk. We have a special assignment for you. Sophia opened it carefully. Her heart skipped. Inside were schematics, ballistic charts, and a designation. Barrett M107A1, experimental modifications. Morrison leaned forward. We're developing long-range reconnaissance and strike capabilities. Distances previously thought impossible. We need the best. You'll work with Dr. Sarah Chen, ballistics expert, and Master Sergeant Williams, one of our most experienced long-range shooters. You'll help prove whether this system can work and whether we can rely on it in the field. The irony hit Sophia. Williams, Jackson's older brother, decorated, known across the military, a skeptic of untested recruits. She could already hear the doubt in his silence. 2 weeks later, she stepped into Nevada's barren training grounds, a classified facility carved out of desert and rock. The air shimmered with heat. Targets dotted the horizon at distances that made the human eye ache. Dr. Chen greeted her with warm intensity. "I've read your file. Your performance in adverse conditions is exactly why you're here." Williams was different. His nod was stiff. His eyes measured her like a scope. "I'll be blunt," he said. "When I heard they were sending a trainee, I wasn't impressed, but your brother won't stop talking about you, and your record, it speaks." The weapon they handed her looked both familiar and alien. The same basic Barrett platform she had carried into dust and fire, but now heavier, longer, alive with embedded technology. Ballistic computers, advanced optics, ammunition engineered for extreme stability. Dr. Chen explained in brisk, clinical tones. "We're pushing past 2,500 meters, past 2,750. Distances where wind shear, humidity, even the Earth's rotation alter everything. You'll have seconds of flight time. A bullet will travel farther than most snipers ever attempt. We're trying to prove if human skill and technology can merge at that range." Sophia's fingers traced the cold steel. It hummed like a promise. 3 weeks in, the program received an unexpected visitor. General Patricia Hayes, a legend, decorated for operations no one dared discuss in detail. "I want to see this myself," Hayes said flatly. "Dr. Chen tells me you're rewriting what's possible. I don't believe in impossible until I've watched it fail." They led her to the range's edge. A target barely visible shimmered on the horizon, 2,750 meters, over a mile and a half. Williams set up the spotting equipment, his movements precise but tense. Marcus, now officially assigned as Sophia's spotter, adjusted instruments with steady hands. He read numbers aloud. "Range 2750, wind southwest 8 to 15 variable, temperature 107, humidity 12%. Dr. Chen's voice was hushed with reverence. "At this distance, the bullet takes more than 3 seconds in flight. It rises higher than a building before it drops down. It's mathematics as much as marksmanship." General Hayes crossed her arms, unimpressed. "Our best snipers usually need multiple rounds to even find the mark. Let's see if this hype is worth my time." Sophia lay prone, cheek pressed to stock, eye locked through scope. The target shimmered like a ghost in the desert. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breath came steady. Her grandfather's voice returned. "Mija, patience, breathing. The weapon is part of your soul." She squeezed. The Barrett thundered. Recoil slammed her shoulder. 1 second, 2, 3. Then impact, dead center. Williams blinked through his scope, disbelief cracking his voice. "Hit, dead center, first round." Dr. Chen's face lit with awe, her words tumbling. "Unprecedented. Do you understand? This isn't just accuracy. It's a revolution in long-range engagement." General Hayes lowered her binoculars slowly. For the first time, her expression broke. Respect grudging, undeniable. "That's impossible," she whispered, "and yet—" Sophia rolled her shoulder, the weight of recoil settling. "It's not impossible, General. Just training, equipment, and knowing every shot matters." Silence fell heavy, until Hayes stepped closer, her voice sharp with decision. "Sergeant Martinez, what you just demonstrated changes everything. We're facing situations overseas where conventional approaches have failed. Enemies entrenched in terrain we can't breach. We need this capability. We need you." Williams looked up sharply. "Deployment." "Immediate," Hayes answered. "Classified operation. You'll receive details once Martinez accepts." Sophia's chest tightened. Deployment. No more training, no more simulations. Lives on the line and her finger on the trigger. Her grandfather's words whispered again, about responsibility, the weight carried by skill. She met the general's eyes. I accept. Dr. Chen stepped forward. She'll need the prototype system. The modified Barrett is still experimental, but it's the only rifle capable of this. Approved, Hayes said instantly. Chen, you'll deploy as technical support. Williams, your backup sniper. Martinez, your primary. Mission parameters will test every limit you've proven here. That night under Nevada's endless stars, Sophia cleaned her rifle by lamplight. The cloth whispered across steel. Marcus sat nearby, quiet as ever. After a long silence, he spoke. You know this changes everything, right? When you come back, you won't just be the best in training. You'll be the best in the military. Sophia didn't look up. I'm not doing this for records. Then why? Her hands stilled, she breathed. Because people need help and I have the skill to give it, that's enough. Marcus smiled faintly. That's exactly why you're the right one. The stars burned brighter overhead, cold and infinite. And beneath them, Sophia understood. This wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about carrying lives, futures, and trust across impossible distances. The desert wind whispered through the range. She whispered back. You belong here. How do you aim at something 2 miles away, knowing you only have one chance? That was the question pressed into Sophia's mind as the transport helicopter rattled through the mountain air. The operation briefing replayed in her head, each detail sharper than the cold wind whipping through the valley below. For 6 months, hostile forces had held the peak. A communications tower fortified, defended, impossible to breach. Every assault failed, every route blocked, casualties stacked high. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, their mission commander, had said it plainly. The leader coordinates operations from that tower every morning at 0800. Our intelligence confirms it. We can't get close. We can't strike from the air without collateral damage. That leaves one option, a single shot, from 3,000 meters. The room had gone silent at those words. 3 kilometers, nearly 2 miles. No sniper had ever confirmed a kill at that distance in combat. It was beyond doctrine, beyond belief. Sophia remembered the way every pair of eyes in the room had turned toward her, some skeptical, some hopeful, all heavy with expectation. I can make the shot, she'd said, quiet, certain, but inside she felt the weight like a mountain pressing her chest. Now, hours later, as the helicopter hugged the cliffside, she checked her gear again. The modified Barrett rested in her lap, strapped tight. Marcus sat beside her, running weather instruments, lips moving as he whispered calculations. Dr. Chen clutched her atmospheric sensors, scanning readouts like a surgeon before an operation. Williams, silent, methodical, double-checked ammunition. The helicopter banked hard. This is as close as we go, the pilot called. You're on foot from here. They rappelled into cold, thin air. Mountain wind cut sharp across their faces. Snow dusted the rocks. The world smelled of stone and silence. The climb was brutal. The Barrett weighed heavy across Sophia's back. Each step scraped bone and muscle raw. But by dawn, they reached the ledge. A narrow shelf of stone overlooking the valley with direct line of sight to the enemy tower 3 kilometers away. Sophia lowered herself prone, chest against cold rock, rifle stretched out before her. Through the scope, the tower shimmered in thin air. Guard patrols circled like ants. At the summit, shadowed figures moved between antennas and comms gear. Range confirmed, Marcus whispered. 3000 meters. Wind at shooting position, southwest 6 miles per hour. Target area wind calm, possible thermal layering. Dr. Chen leaned closer, eyes wide. She's right. Wind conditions at the target differ from ours. If she times it, there will be a brief window of stability. Williams grunted. Brief means seconds, maybe less. Sophia's cheek pressed to the stock. The scope painted the world in impossible detail. Flags fluttering near the tower, heat shimmer rolling like water, a single doorway where her target might appear. For 3 days they watched, studied, waited. Each morning the enemy leader emerged briefly, 60 seconds of vulnerability, then gone again. Each day the wind betrayed them, gusting, swirling, chaotic. Sophia stayed prone for hours, body aching, eye burning from the scope. Not yet, not now, not with this wind. But on the 5th morning, something changed. Marcus's voice came low, urgent. Wind shift stabilizing, southwest steady at 6, target location calm. Dr. Chen checked her sensors. We have a thermal window, 10 minutes, maybe less. Sophia's pulse slowed, her world narrowed. Target emerging, Marcus whispered. Through her scope she saw him. The enemy commander stepping into the morning light, pausing by the comms tower, a small figure at this distance, barely more than a shadow. Marcus's voice ticked like a metronome. Range 3047, wind steady, temperature -12 Celsius, bullet flight time 4.3 seconds, margin of error inches mean hundreds of yards. Sophia exhaled, slow, controlled. She remembered her grandfather's words, patience, breathing, make the weapon part of your soul. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The Barrett thundered, recoil slammed her shoulder. The bullet soared into the thin mountain air, climbing higher than buildings, arching in a perfect parabola. 1 second, 2, 3, 4. Through the scope she saw the figure jolt, collapse. Hit confirmed, Marcus breathed, his voice shook. Target down, 3,047 meters. The tower went silent. Radios across the valley crackled, then died. Confusion rippled through enemy lines. Colonel Mitchell's voice came over comms, sharp with awe. Outstanding work, Sniper Queen. That shot just changed everything. Sophia lowered the Barrett slowly. Her hands trembled, not from doubt, but from the sheer weight of what she had just done. She had fired one bullet and ended a stalemate that had cost lives for months. The others stared at her in silence, Marcus with reverence, Dr. Chen with disbelief, even Williams the skeptic with grudging respect. But Sophia didn't feel triumph. She felt the truth her grandfather had tried to teach her years ago: every shot carries weight. Because this one didn't just save lives, it rewrote what was possible. As the team packed up, snow crunching under boots, Sophia lingered a moment longer. She cleaned her rifle methodically, cloth brushing steel, ritual steadying her pulse. She whispered softly, words lost to the mountain wind. "You belong here." And for the first time, she knew it was true. What happens when one shot changes everything? The question followed Sophia down the mountain, clinging to her like the cold. She had fired a single bullet, less than an inch wide, and in 4 seconds it had shifted the balance of an entire campaign. The enemy tower silent, their command broken, troops scattering in confusion. By the time they reached the extraction point, her name had already traveled faster than they had. "Sniper Queen," the comms crackled with Colonel Mitchell's voice, half in awe, half in disbelief. "That 3,000-meter shot will go down in history." The helicopter blades whipped snow into a storm as the team climbed aboard. Marcus strapped in beside her, eyes wide with something close to reverence. "Do you realize what you just did? No one thought it was possible. No one. You didn't just make the shot, you set a new standard." Sophia stared at the Barrett resting across her lap, its steel dark against the mountain light. She didn't feel like a standard. She felt like someone who had just carried the weight of dozens of lives in her crosshairs. William sat opposite her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. At last he spoke. "I've spent my life teaching men to respect the craft of the long gun. Today I learned from you." Sophia looked up, startled. He held her gaze with steady eyes. That was more than skill. It was discipline, patience, responsibility. That's what makes a sniper. You've earned the name they've given you, Sniper Queen. The words rang heavy. Not a joke anymore, not a sneer. a crown placed on her head one she hadn't asked for but could never remove. When they returned to base, everything had changed. Soldiers who once looked past her now stopped mid-stride to watch her walk through the halls. Recruits whispered in corners, not with laughter but with awe. Her name appeared on reports, marked in bold ink, circled by generals. Jackson's message arrived first. A simple text from overseas. Heard what you did. Make us proud, Sniper Queen. The whole base is rooting for you. Others followed, former critics, former mockers. They sent words of respect, encouragement, even gratitude. The nickname that once stung now came with honor, but it didn't make it lighter. That night Sophia sat alone in her quarters, rifle across her lap, cleaning cloth in hand. The ritual slowed her pulse, steadied her breath. She could still feel the mountain wind on her skin, hear the Barrett's thunder echoing through the valley. Marcus knocked softly on the door before stepping in. He sat across from her, watching the way she worked the bolt, the way her hands moved with precision. "You don't look happy," he said finally. Sophia paused, cloth resting on the barrel. "I'm not sure this is something to be happy about." "You saved lives," Marcus pressed. "You ended a stalemate. You showed the impossible could be done." She shook her head slowly. "And now they'll expect it again, and again. Every time they'll look to me to make the impossible shot. What happens when I can't, when conditions don't line up, when my finger slips by a breath?" Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Then they'll know you're human, but they'll also know you tried, and they'll know you carried the weight when no one else could." Sophia lowered her eyes. The truth cut deep. Her shot had become legend, but legends weren't free. They demanded sacrifice. The next morning the base buzzed with visitors. High-ranking officers, intelligence analysts, even engineers from weapons labs. They wanted to see the rifle, see the woman behind it, touch the steel that had broken the impossible. Sophia endured the handshakes, the photos, the questions. Each one left her feeling more distant, more hollow. They weren't celebrating her. They were celebrating what she could do for them. Late that evening she escaped to the range. Alone. Just her, the Barrett, and the silence of Nevada's desert night. She set a target at 500 meters, child's play compared to what she had done. She fired once. Dead center. She fired again. Another perfect hit. The shots echoed into the empty dark, softer than memory, lighter than history. Her grandfather's voice whispered across the years. "Mija, it isn't about the records. It isn't about the cheers. It's about doing what's necessary when it matters." She lowered the rifle, breath misting in the night air. She wasn't chasing records. She wasn't chasing legends. She was chasing responsibility, the quiet dignity of doing her duty when no one else could. And in that silence, she finally understood. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't shout. It doesn't ask for applause. It simply acts. What happens after a legend is born? For Sophia, it didn't feel like glory. It felt like weight. The day after her return, her name was everywhere. Reports of the 3,000-meter shot spread across bases, across commands, across the military itself. Some called it impossible. Others called it luck. But most called it proof. Proof that a woman mocked as Barbie with a Barrett could outshoot the world. Proof that the impossible wasn't so impossible after all. Yet Sophia didn't feel like proof. She felt like someone who had carried the crosshairs of history for 4 seconds and knew she might be asked to do it again tomorrow. In the weeks that followed, she trained harder, not softer. While others celebrated, she returned to the range. She shot in wind, in heat, in cold. She fired until her shoulder bruised and her eyes ached. Not to chase records, not to silence doubters, but to prepare. Because she knew the truth. Legends weren't shields. Legends were expectations. At night, when the barracks grew quiet, she would sit with her rifle and remember. The laughter of the recruits. The sting of being left unchosen. The calm steadiness of Marcus's voice when he first trusted her. The shift in Jackson's eyes when he finally saw her as more than a joke. She thought of her grandfather's words about patience, breathing, and responsibility, and she realized the lessons hadn't been about shooting at all. They had been about life, about carrying dignity in silence, about letting actions speak louder than defense, louder than excuses, louder than pain. 6 months later, she was summoned again. Another mission, another valley where lives depended on precision, another enemy who believed themselves safe behind walls and distance. The details blurred together, maps spread across tables, weather reports, satellite images. But one thing remained the same. At the center of it all, they looked to her. Sophia Martinez, the sniper queen. She lay prone once again, cheek pressed to stock, eye behind scope, body braced against the earth. Wind tugged at her hair, breath misted in the air. And once again she whispered to herself, "You belong here." The shot came, another impossible arc, another silence broken by thunder, another enemy who learned too late that distance is not safety. When the mission ended, Marcus walked beside her in silence. He looked at her, eyes full of pride and something deeper. Do you ever stop to realize what you've done? You've changed what people believe is possible. Sophia shook her head. I'm not here to change belief. I'm here to do the job. He studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. That's exactly why they believe. Back at base, another message waited for her. Not from generals this time. From Sergeant Rodriguez, the first man who'd mocked her tears on the range, who doubted she could handle a Barrett. It was short, just a few words. Martinez, I was wrong. That shot will be studied for generations. You've earned the name Sniper Queen in every sense of the word. She read it twice, then folded it, tucked it away. She didn't need the apology, but she understood what it meant. Even those who had once doubted her now saw the truth. And so the girl who had been mocked, the recruit who had once fought tears on the firing line, became something else entirely. She became a reminder that strength isn't always loud, that dignity doesn't always answer insult with insult, that sometimes the surest way to silence mockery is not with words, but with a single, perfect action. When recruits whispered her name now, it wasn't to laugh. It was to hope, to believe that maybe they too could carry weight with quiet steadiness, that maybe they too could turn ridicule into respect. Sophia didn't chase those whispers. She didn't need to. She carried her rifle, she carried her lessons, she carried her silence. And when the time came, she carried her shot. Because she had learned something that stayed with her forever. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't argue. It doesn't defend. It simply acts. And in that action, everything changes.